The quality of your mind is the quality of your life. It took me 22 years to learn the incredibly simple but life-changing information I'm about to relay to you within the next few minutes. Because I don't know about you, but I don't remember anyone when I was younger sitting me down, no single sod said something along the lines of this: Lewis, there's this thing called your brain, yep, up here in your skull, and sometimes it's going to be your best friend, but more often than not, it's going to be your worst enemy. So here's the blueprint on how to manage it. No, we had to sit there in school and learn bollocks about longshore drift and Pythagoras theorem. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry no one has told you how to manage your mind. And I'm sorry you have to rely on some stranger on the internet to tell you how to do so. And don't laugh at my drawing. In fact, yes, laugh, because we've started off on a serious foot. So, should we get into it? There are only 3 things you need to do to manage your brain so you can psychologically flourish. 1, you need to recognise who is in charge at any given moment. We're going to cover the 2 brain regions involved. 2, you need to understand the rules of the brain and accept them, because you can't change them. And finally, you need to nurture and manage your chimp to get the best results for you. Yes, this whole time there has been a chimpanzee roaming free in your mind, which is the culprit of most of your demise. Anyway, bollocks. Now I have to try and draw a brain. What? I will not bore you and focus heavily on the neuroscience today, so in order to simplify it, we're just going to focus on 3 brain regions, which are the most important that you need to know about. As simplified by Professor Steve Peters in his book, The Chimp Paradox, we're only going to be focusing on the frontal lobe, the human, the limbic system, the chimp, and the parietal lobe, which is the computer. And what you'll notice throughout the next few minutes of this video is the degree to which you're able to manage your chimp dictates your flourishing in life. Moving on, first up we got the chimp, which as you'll see is the most important part of your brain to manage. The chimp only has 2 goals: survive, to avoid danger, and to reproduce, to make more babies. It operates in reference to the laws of the jungle, which are its instincts, so freeze, fight or flight, and its drives. All of these things: food, power, sex, security, territory, shelter, ego, and staying in the troop, which is your band of people. The chimp makes decisions emotionally, which we'll get into in a second, and the way its thinking manifests is much along the lines of, but what if this happens? Or, but I feel tired, so I'm not going to work out. Or, but I feel overworked, so I'm going to binge eat. And the chimp also engages in black and white thinking. The golden rule of this brain region, the chimp, is that when you're feeling or thinking something you don't want to feel or think, you are hijacked by your chimp. And you then need to activate your human to override the hijacking. And the last thing to note about your chimp is you cannot change it. You can only manage it, as great as it would be to change it. It's much like having a dog. If you're out on a walk and your dog bites someone, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. We're going to get into how to manage it later, but next, the human. Now focusing on the human. The human has 2 primary goals. 1, self-fulfillment, so being the best version of yourself, and 2, social harmony, so operating within society in order to make it flourish. And it is governed by the laws of society. Hence, when we look at some of the drives of the human, they involve rationality, logic, the goal to balance the chimp, honesty, conscience, self-control, purpose, and achievement. The human is the part of your brain which is activated when you are striving towards a goal and you are steering clear of distraction and temptation and emotionality. But the most important aspects of this brain region, and one of the ways it balances out the chimp, is through rationality and logic. It is that voice of reason which speaks to you after a breakup when you realise this too shall pass and I just need to weather the storm. Funnily enough, the reason it took me 22 years to learn all of this knowledge is because 22 years into my life was when I went through my first breakup and my chimp was going absolutely mad, and I spent a whole summer just trying to activate my human, which I'll teach you how to do. The chimp makes decisions based on how it feels right now, which is why it pulls you so deeply into the present moment when you're about to relapse or do something you shouldn't be doing. However, the human makes decisions based on how you will feel later and if that action is in alignment with a goal you've previously highlighted. Not sure what what's going on there. And I know there's more muchachas, more women watching the channel nowadays, which is great. I just want to highlight that neuroscientifically, our humans, male and female, are pretty much the same. However, our chimps are a little bit different because of the hormones involved. The hormones which govern the chimp, largely for men, are testosterone, and women, estrogen. So that was just something to note. Now let's have a look at how the human and chimp interact together. Now looking at a sequence of events in terms of how both the human and the chimp would interpret that sequence of events, let's have a look at the stream. So an event happens, you get your results back on your exam, or you get a weird text from your partner. You then interpret it. Now you have two options in terms of your interpretation. One, you can lean into the chimp side of things, which, by the way, one thing to note here, whenever we receive an input from our external environment, it always goes to the chimp first and then the human second. And when it goes to the chimp is obviously spellbound into the present moment, and it focuses on feelings and impressions, engages in emotional thinking. Oh my god, this means the end of the world and this is something bad. Oh my god, I failed the exam, that means I'm worthless and I'm never gonna amount to anything. Or oh my god, they sent me a weird message, that means they definitely don't like me anymore. And then it develops a plan of action from there. Very much emotional. However, if we lean to the human side of things, we focus on the facts and truth of the situation. We engage our logical thinking, and then we instill a plan of action. You get your mark back on your test. Oh, I didn't do as well as I thought, but I still put a lot of effort in, so I'm proud of myself for that, and I'm just going to use this as feedback for the next time. Imagine if we always interpreted in that way. Brilliant. That is the point. In those moments where you feel most rational and aligned and calm, that is when your human has been engaged. But, as mentioned, information always goes to the chimp first and then the human second. And the reason why that happens, as in information goes to the chimp first, is because your chimp is a older region of the brain, is the most simple way that I could put it. And because we evolved from humans who had to pay attention to the present moment lest they die, because there were so many dangers like saber-toothed tigers and cave women and men around, they had to be more attuned to danger, which is what your chimp is. It's attuned to threats because remember, it wants to survive and it wants to procreate. My drawing of the chimp is getting different every single time. Your chimp is 5 times stronger than your human. And you know this from experience because whenever something happens, you usually interpret it in an emotional way until you're able to calm yourself down naturally with facts and logic. So the key is we don't control the chimp, we manage it. To illustrate this further, do not try to arm wrestle your chimp. I know it's a funny illustration, but the fact that the human is naturally drawn as a stick figure in comparison to the chimp is very indicative of the fact that the chimp is always stronger than the human. I don't know if you've seen a chimp in real life, but they're some strong boys. So if you try to control it, it will win the fight. What you need is to nurture it and then manage it, which we're going to get into next. To highlight the sequence of events again, an input happens, the chimp interprets it emotionally first, and then it sends an offer, keyword offer, to the human. Not a command. The human can choose whether to accept or reject what the chimp is suggesting. Let me illustrate this further. But the important thing to note is when the chimp sends an offer and the human accepts it, everything is okay. The chimp has got what it wanted. For example, you're sat there doing focused deep work and suddenly your chimp wants to listen to music. If you then allow it to listen to music, it won't torment you. But when the chimp sends an offer and the human rejects it, the human now has to manage and soothe an upset chimp, which we're going to get into now. There are 4 ways to manage the chimp, but the most important thing to notice is when your mind is going crazy, and again, remember the golden rule, when you're having thoughts or feelings that you don't want to think or feel, you need to nurture your chimp and then manage it in that order. The 3 other ways to manage your chimp as well as nurture then manage are exercise, box and distract. Note for all of you who are like, oh, he's going to tell us to exercise again. This word exercise does not necessarily mean physically exercise, if you feel me. Remember what we covered at the beginning about the chimp and its drives, some of which include power, pleasure, food, sex and territory, but one of the most important ones to note when nurturing it is security. You have to put your chimp in a secure place in order to manage it. When the chimp is going haywire and you're thinking and feeling things you don't want to think or feel, you need to first understand what drive the chimp is trying to fulfill, and then you need to help your chimp fulfill that in a way that is acceptable to your goals and the world you currently live in. The world you currently live in? Are you planning on going Mars anytime soon? That was a weird way of saying it. And the most important thing to note here is what we said at the beginning of this sequence. You need to nurture, then manage. Because if you just jump in straight away trying to control your brain when it's going haywire, you're going about it in the wrong way, because the chimp, most of the time, just wants attention and it just wants to be soothed. Just nutmegged myself with a pen. Moving on to the second point, so exercising your chimp. This is a great way to nurture it. Because what we mean by exercise is this. That is the best drawing I've done of the chimp so far. Round of applause. A moment of silence for all the other chimps. What we mean by exercising the chimp is 4 things. 1, you take the chimp to a locked compound. 2, you let it all out. 3, you listen to the chimp for as long as it takes. And 4, you don't comment. You know when you're talking to someone and it's just a complete rambling nonsense of things that have annoyed them over the past few days? Yeah, guess who's talking? This fella. So, of course, you're the unfortunate fellow who's found yourself listening to this person, but think about yourself. When I was younger, 18, I started to get into stoicism, and I used to look very negatively on complaining. But now I'm 24 and I've understood more about this chimp management stuff. I start to realise that complaining, when you're in a locked compound, is very important, because we gather so many things that annoy us and all of our guilt and shame and things we're thinking about, things that the chimp is emotionally fixated on. But if you go to a place, and what I mean is, the way I do this is, I go on a walk 2 times a day, and when I'm walking I talk to myself out loud, which, side note, is why I loved COVID, because I could wear a mask and people didn't look at me and think, oh my god, why is that weirdo talking to himself? Chimp management, that's what I'm doing. I should have that written on my forehead. But I go and I talk to myself out loud, and when I come back I don't still have the ruminating thoughts of what I was talking about on my walk, because it's chimp management. We have to do this once a day. I want you to pay attention to this quote. The goal is not to be cured, but to always keep one's ailments at hand. Ailments meaning medicine. I'm not sure who said this quote, but it stuck with me ever since I heard it a few years ago. Remember, you cannot change your chimp. You only have to manage it. You cannot control it either. So when you instill a practice like going on a walk and talking to yourself out loud, screaming into a pillow, doing scream therapy like Steve Jobs used to do, in a safe environment, because remember, you don't want to offload this onto the people that love you and care for you. You want to be able to manage your chimp in your own way. You might do this through recording a voice note to yourself when you're feeling the emotional tension rise and pulsate throughout your life. And remember, you let it all out without commenting. It's not your place to judge your chimp in terms of when it's offloading all of its emotional turmoil that it needs to. And you need to listen to the chimp for as long as it takes. And how long does it take? You'll know, because as soon as you stop speaking, you'll feel calmer and you'll feel as if I can now move on to the next thing, and your human then takes charge. Remember, the chimp just wants attention. And if you don't give it attention, it will creep back up in one way or another. There's a Japanese or Chinese word, I think it's revenge, bedtime, procrastination. And it clicked in my head the other day. It's just the chimp. That's all it's doing. Those moments when you self-sabotage, or you get yourself into a rut, or you procrastinate, like we covered in the rut video we did a few weeks ago. Self-sabotage is an act of rebellion. Because in one way or another, you've been tapping so far on the discipline equation that you've ignored your chimp. And worse yet, you've ignored that you need to nurture your chimp and then manage it. So this is exercising the chimp. And realise that you might have to do this once a day for the rest of your life. That's just the way it works. You can't fight the rules of the brain. Remember, when we covered the 3 things we were going to cover in this video, one of them was you need to understand the rules of the brain and accept them. You have to accept that you're going to have to exercise your chimp whenever it goes haywire. One thing to note is the chimp doesn't always need exercising. Sometimes you can do this too much, where you allow your chimp to be exercised and then it hijacks your behaviour even more, and you're thinking, wow, what the hell? It feels like I've awoken a demon. So don't provoke the chimp by exercising it unnecessarily if logic is enough to calm it down. If you have a mantra, sometimes just saying the mantra is enough to put the chimp back in its box. Which, moving into point number 3, after you've exercised the chimp, otherwise known as nurturing it, you can then box the chimp. When we box the chimp, not as in proper box, but put it in a safe place where it feels secure, we do so by looking at a situation through the eyes of the human, getting facts from the situation. Because remember, the chimp engages in black and white thinking. For example, if you're in the situation where you're not sure whether you should leave your partner or not, or end a friendship, your chimp will look at the situation, again in black and white, and say, I need to either leave or stay with this person. But you can offset this, put the chimp in a box, by engaging grey thinking, where you look between the lines. For example, the human might then reason, but the situation doesn't need a decision right now, which is a great way to calm down your chimp. The chimp, when it engages in black and white thinking, is just trying to fill in the gaps. It's trying to reach a conclusion so it can feel secure, but kickstart the human by getting more facts from the situation to then box the chimp. The way you can tell the chimp is trying to fill in the gaps is if you're having crazy imaginative thoughts about a situation and maybe your resentment is going haywire. One thing I wanted to mention, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, is you might be thinking that the chimp is a bad guy all of the time. Hence, we should just completely get rid of this brain region. No, because the chimp is also responsible for things such as gut feelings, which sometimes are right. And the human, in every situation, isn't always right. Sometimes we need to rely on our gut feelings, but most of the time we could do with kickstarting our human more. And lastly, the 4th way to manage your chimp is the banana of distraction. I don't have yellow, so it's going to have to be a red banana. It's not really a banana, but anyway, let's imagine you want to start waking up early, but every time your alarm goes off, your chimp reasons how cozy and warm it is under the covers, so you stay put and you don't instill this new habit that you want to instill. The way you can start waking up early in this situation is by giving your chimp the banana of distraction. And what you do is when your chimp is emotionally reasoning with you about why you should not do something, again, through the sentence of, oh, we can't wake up early because I feel so cozy and warm under the covers, count back from 5. And suddenly, your chimp has something to focus on. So you lie there in bed, you're thinking about going back to bed, just randomly count down from 5 and say you're going to get up on 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and instantly get back up. The reason why the chimp goes haywire is because it doesn't have something worthwhile to focus on. So if you start to count down when you're in that situation, your chimp now focuses on the countdown and has a goal which has been directed by the human. To give you a personal example for me, each day I wake up and I do 2 90-minute study sessions. But halfway through some of the sessions, my chimp is thinking, oh, I should check Twitter, or let's listen to some cool music while we're doing this. But in order to distract it, I have to give it something reasonable that it would like. So I have a cup of tea. Something to focus on, and it gives my chimp the feeling of, oh, we now have something to distract us from all the other things we wanted to do. Give it a banana of distraction. Remember, a banana that is reasonable. You don't want to be working and then suddenly say, oh yeah, chimp, we'll go have some chocolate pretzels even though we're on a diet. No, negotiate with the chimp and find something that is good enough for the chimp and good enough for your human as well. Now, essentially everything we've just covered there covers something called the NEAT framework. N, it's normal to have a chimp that outbursts sometimes and you won't always manage it well. E, you should expect this from time to time. A, accept that you're not perfect and the chimp is very powerful. T, take care of the outbursts with appropriate coping and apologies if you hurt someone. Before we move on to the computer and finalise with some other bonus tips, I just want to cover one thing about anxiety and one technique you can use to help you manage your chimp better. One of my favourite things I've learned over the past few months is anxiety at the root of it is indecision. So when we perceive a threat, something that makes us anxious, remember information always goes to the chimp first. And what the chimp does is it will either make an emotional decision or stay in the debilitating environment of indecision, which then sparks our anxious fight, flight, or freeze response, causing more anxiety. No decision is made, so then it goes back to this indecision again. However, what you need is the human to just make a decision. You can quell a lot of your anxiety by developing a fingertip feel for making decisions. Of course, some decisions are harder to make than others, but if you pay attention to this framework, you'll understand your anxiety is just a reverberating mental loop of focusing on the threat. Chimp interprets it, can't decide, more anxiety, can't decide, more anxiety, make a decision. And the decision will help reassure the chimp. And the last thing to note is that anxiety is a perfectly natural response from your brain, and it indicates you have a healthy chimp, okay? And you might notice a particular theme here in terms of managing our chimp, and it is self-awareness. Practice something called development time. Maybe you grab a journal and you reflect on each day and you think, how much did I operate from my chimp? How much did I operate from my human? Again, without judgment, because your chimp is always going to be present. Just judge your days based on your ability to nurture and then manage your chimp based on what we just covered. Now let's finalise with the last brain part we're going to cover. The computer, otherwise known as your parietal lobe, is the part of your brain which is essentially a command centre. It governs your knee-jerk reactions to things, and it is the holding place for all of your beliefs, habits and knowledge that you have accrued over your life. Brilliant, now I have to draw another brain. This is the computer, this is the chimp, this is the human. The computer makes decisions 20 times faster than the human and 5 times faster than the chimp. And the main things that comprise the computer are 4 things, actually. Autopilots, your positive beliefs. Goblins, all of your bad habits and traumas and negative beliefs that you've programmed since childhood. Gremlins, these are still negative beliefs, but they are much easier replaceable than goblins. For example, they are things such as unrealistic or unhelpful expectations. And lastly, you have the stone of life, which is the record of your life's values, the truths of life, your mindsets, and your purpose. To program your computer so you flourish, there are only 2 things you need to do. You need to replace gremlins for autopilots, and you need to be careful in terms of how you interpret new experiences so that new experiences don't become goblins or gremlins. Goblins. Why does that word make me laugh? Remember, goblins, those traumas and negative beliefs are hardwired, whereas gremlins are easily replaced and are more soft-wired. To give you an example of a goblin, let me introduce you to an analogy called the fridge door syndrome. The fridge door syndrome might have happened to you, might not, but what it is let's imagine when you was a kid, you had a day at school where you had to draw a picture for your parents, and you come home and you say, Mum, Dad, look what I drew for you at school today. And they turn to you and they say, oh darling, that is so fantastic, you're so intelligent. What I want to do is I want to stick this up on the fridge so the whole world can see how fantastic you are. What has this div of a parent just communicated to their child? One thing. Your self-worth is dependent on what you achieve, not on who you are. Because in another scenario, what this div of a parent could have done is said, I am proud of you regardless of what you do. Are you happy with the drawing? Do you like it? Okay, I really like it. It's something that I appreciate. Would you like me to put it on the fridge door? Much better. And secondly, because we do this to kids all the bloody time, by giving children labels such as, you are so clever, you're so intelligent, you're so fantastic, what else are we subtly communicating to this child? We are communicating that don't you dare try doing anything new or outside your zone of comfort, lest you are seen as not intelligent, clever, or fantastic anymore. We don't praise kids for the effort that they put into things. We praise them based on their achievements, which just messes everyone up, and guess what it creates? A goblin. So to put this in realistic terms, the kid grows up seeking external validation from others and only feeling a sense of self-worth when they achieve things. Getting very passionate today. Right, what can we do about all of this if we are a victim to the fridge door syndrome? We need to stop our chimp from dancing with the gremlins by replacing them with autopilots. Remember, the computer is responsible for all of our knee-jerk programming and reactions to things. However, the degree to which we program our computer with autopilots rather than gremlins determines whether we interpret experiences from our human or our chimp. For example, a gremlin for you, which was very much for me in the summer I mentioned after I broke up with my ex-girlfriend and my chimp was going haywire, I had the gremlin that I should be handling this perfectly. However, I had to diligently replace that gremlin over a period of a few weeks with the autopilot of I can only try my best. Gremlins are very easy to program into your computer. However, we can block it by diligently focusing on the thoughts we want to program into our computer. Now let me show you a list of what this looks like, and by the way, this is life-changing stuff. It sounds very simple, but oh man, this has got me out of so many tough situations in life. Let's imagine you're about to socialise and you're feeling a bit socially anxious. Some gremlins you might have programmed previously would be, I have to make a good impression. An autopilot could be, I can only be myself, and what they make of me is up to them. I'm about to be judged. They're going to meet me, and whether they judge me or not, I can't control. I can only be me. We won't have anything in common. It doesn't matter if we have nothing in common. I can always ask about them and listen. And finally, if I make a fool of myself, I'll look stupid. If I make a fool of myself, it wasn't intentional. What they make of it is up to them. I can only be myself. I still do this to this day. Hence, I have a piece of paper somewhere here because I was thinking about my gremlins the other day. This is what I keep out at all times. Write up a list of the current gremlins that are holding you back and counteract them with the autopilots you want to program. Because you don't just magically think of these autopilots once and then they're programmed into your computer. No, you have to look at them every single day for a period of a few weeks in order for them to become automatic and steer you through the storm you're currently experiencing. My ones at the moment are, my brain is not my enemy. My brain just wants what's best for me and my genes. Sometimes it just needs a little guidance and channeling. The pain I feel today is the strength I feel tomorrow, and I can't think my way into better action, but I can act my way into better thinking. What helped me steer the ship and return to stillness through that breakup, which was the first one I ever experienced, albeit I chose to break up with a girl, but it was still tough, was just keeping out a list of all the gremlins I had, counteracting them with the autopilots. And I would wake up every single day, no matter how I felt, and I would read that list. And what you'll notice is as you start to program your autopilots more and counteract your gremlins, your mindset changes. And your mindset is nothing more than a collection of your most fundamental beliefs. So if you make your most fundamental beliefs positive and steering you in a good direction with your autopilots, your mindset naturally shifts. Allow me to illustrate this. Change your mindset and you change your personality. For example, your poor self-image, coupled with your belief that the world is hostile, fosters an unhappy personality, which is also fueled by your social perspective that people are unfriendly. Imagine if we change this. You believe the world is inherently welcoming, you have a good self-image, fosters your happy personality, also facilitated by your social belief that people are inherently friendly. Take the programming of your autopilots seriously, because from my experience, I cannot tell you how much this will facilitate your growth in life. Coupled that with the management of your chimp. Find the autopilots that are true for you, and remember, gremlins return, so you must stay vigilant. And the final thing for us to cover, which is in the computer, is your stone of life. And remember what this includes: the truths of life, your values, and your life force or your purpose. Now your values, of course, we've spoken about before on this channel, but these are the collections of the things that are inherently meaningful to you. For example, some might be honesty, integrity, strength, just to name a few. Of course, introspect and find your own values. The truths of life are the inherent beliefs of reality that you hold. Think about them as the most realistic autopilots you could program. For example, some inherent truths of life is life's not fair, the goalposts move, and nothing is guaranteed. And lastly, your life force or your purpose is that thing which guides you towards your self-actualization. And I am excited to tell you this next part because this changed my life. If you are watching this video and you have no idea what your purpose in life is, then I have an exercise to share with you that Professor Steve Peters taught me that will help you find this purpose instantly. to figure out what your purpose in life is and what you should do with the remainder of your days. Imagine you are 90 years old and you are on your deathbed, and as you're about to take your last breath, your great-grandchild rushes through the door and says, "Great-grandparent, you have lived such a fulfilling and meaningful life. But I don't know what to do with my life. What should I do?" Your 1-minute instinctual response to that question is what you should do for the rest of your life. Write it down and stick it on your wall. And the last thing to note about the computer, which is very cool, is if throughout your life you're experiencing any sort of stress, it's likely because you have programmed a should gremlin in terms of how you should be dealing with a situation or how you should be feeling. And the cool thing is, as we've mentioned, is these are very easily reprogrammed with our boys, the autopilots. Yippee! And to finalise this segment about the computer, here's a little exercise you can use to help you facilitate the programming of it. Very simply, you think of the ideal type of person you want to become, then think about the type of person you currently are. Contrast these two characteristics with a friend to help you gain a further perspective on it. And then finally, with that information, simply highlight what gremlins need replacing for autopilots. So when you hear people on the internet talking about positive thinking and all of that stuff, there's an actual process behind it. To finalise, let's outline how you can facilitate your growth in 3 key areas. Now understanding this information we've covered about mind management, communication, success, and happiness. First up, communication. Now you understand what you understand about the human and the chimp, you can start to look back on some conversations you've had in the past that got out of hand and realise what was happening. 2 chimps were talking to each other. So the best way to improve your communication skills with other people is to first speak through your human by steering clear of the emotional rants you might get into in a conversation and bringing a more calm, rational voice to the table, which highlights an interesting fact about communication. If you speak through your human, it also invites the human out in the other person, and vice versa when you speak through your chimp. Number 2, adjust your expectations. It's a difficult burden to throw onto other people of expectations that they didn't agree to. So don't expect your partner to be a good artist if they can't draw for bollocks. Don't expect other people to have traits that they can't possess. For example, when you go back to your family gatherings, you might realise that your family prize a bit too much in your personal endeavours. But they're really good listeners. So it's a trade-off. They're probably never going to change their behaviour, so adjust your expectations. Number 3, examine your prejudices. When we meet people for the first time, we often base our first impressions on trivial things, such as appearance or how they come across. But notice the way you interpret other people might be a result of some gremlins you've programmed in the past, so pay attention to them. And the last thing to note about the world of other people is our chimps need a troop. Think about it. A chimp left alone in the wild is prone to danger. So he needs other chimps around him to facilitate psychological security so he can feel not only validated, but safe in his environment. So choose your troop wisely. Those select few individuals you choose to trust and foster a community with. Secondly, moving into the realm of success, the only thing to note is your chimp and your human want completely different things. The chimp will view success in terms of money and power, but the human will pursue things that are intrinsically meaningful, such as meaning and a sense of purpose. In order to achieve your goals and to properly follow through on them, there are only 4 things you need to pay attention to. Commitment. In order to be more committed, don't rely on emotional chimp commitment, because this is fleeting and it will come and go. Instead, rely on thoughtful human commitment by, when you have a goal in mind, take a moment to think through all of the potential obstacles that could arise and put a management plan in place. Number 2 is ownership. When we feel a sense of ownership and accountability over what we're doing, our chimp and our human work together to facilitate the project, which highlights an interesting aspect about working with other people. If you're working with other people, you'll need to calm your chimp by First, understanding what is expected of you, and second, having clear roles with the people you're working with. Who's working on what and who is responsible for what. Otherwise, your chimp will act out because it doesn't have security. Thirdly, accountability. The chimp will try to shirk its responsibilities when it loses its emotional investment for something. So, in order to prevent this when working towards a goal, instill manageable benchmarks for your behaviour so you know when you're progressing, such as deadlines and checkpoints, which will let you know that you're on the right path, giving your chimp the feedback that, oh, this is worth doing. And finally, when it comes to setting goals, you know the deal. Set tasks of just manageable difficulty, because if it's too hard, your chimp will act out and not even try. If it's too easy, you'll just stay in the realm of comfort. You want to aim for just manageable difficulty. Let's go. And finally, before we move on to happiness, we would be remiss if we didn't speak about carrots when it comes to success. Carrots are the things that motivate you to keep going. And in order to motivate your chimp to keep going in the direction your human wants it to go to, you need to have a diverse range of carrots to motivate the chimp. Because the chimp is motivated by validation and praise. So you need to celebrate sometimes in order to give your chimp the validation it wants. Now, your carrots are the things that genuinely motivate you, and they can be the small little checkpoints you throw in there for a celebration when you reach a milestone. For me, sometimes it's listening to music after I study, or having an extra bit of cheese with my steak. Find what motivates you, and note that it's not a bad thing to occasionally let your chimp turn to your troop in order to get some validation, because that is another thing that motivates it. But only do that occasionally, because it's a dangerous trap. And finally, let's have a little chat about happiness, eh? And how we can be happier. Now, happiness is comprised of two key components, confidence in yourself and security. The only thing to note about confidence is your chimp will view confidence based on what it achieves. But what it needs is the human to override this to instill confidence in yourself based on the effort you put in rather than the results you get from things. Because the chimp, although it seeks its confidence in external results, doesn't realise that by doing so it creates volatility, because sometimes we get results and sometimes we don't. You need to rely on your human to remind the chimp that we've already put enough effort in, and that is where we get our confidence from, because that is something we can control, whereas the results are something we have no control over. If you're about to approach an attractive stranger because you want their number, understand the number getting is a bonus. As soon as your feet start walking towards that person, you've already won because of the effort. And lastly, when it comes to security, we understand this is what the chimp so craves. But in its worst form, this is what causes us to fear change, because we see change as obviously uncertain and taking us out of that feeling of security. So when you're in a stage in life, when your chimp is hijacking you and you're resisting inner change, again, you have to rely on your human to soothe the chimp by doing one thing: fear setting. This is when you confront the things that are currently freaking your chimp out and you dissect them based on a table with 3 components, as proposed by Tim Ferriss. You think about the things you're currently fearing and you put them in a table with 3 elements. Define the fear, prevent the fear, and prepare for the fear. For example, when I was 20, I wanted to be a bartender, even though I didn't drink alcohol because it was a social job. And I remember I started working in a restaurant that was really fancy. It was like a 5-star restaurant, and I had never worked anywhere that high end before. So I had a very big fear that I could spill a drink and everyone would laugh at me. In order to prevent that, I could say, I can practice before my shift with my boss. If it did happen, the way I would prepare for it is I could say, I can laugh it off and remind people that I'm new. You might think, what if I run out of money if I go all in on my passion? To prevent that, you can search for a part-time job. To prepare for it, if it did happen, you can move back in with your mum, if that's an option. When you confront your fears about risk, you get your chimp on your side because you calm it down. And if you're honest about how you can prevent and define your fears, your chimp will work with you. This is human work, soothing the chimp. So, in summary, how the bloody hell am I going to summarise this? And how the bloody hell am I going to wipe all this whiteboard? Yeah. The 3 most important brain regions for you to know about are the limbic system, the frontal lobe, and the parietal lobe, otherwise funnily known as the chimp, human, and the computer. Starting with the chimp. The chimp always receives information first. And it's the part of your brain which is driven by the laws of the jungle: sex, territory, power, food, otherwise known as following its survival instincts to reproduce and survive. It is much like a dog, in the sense of if you're walking your dog and your dog bites someone, it's not your fault, but you are responsible for the dog. The 4 ways to manage your chimp are: 1. Nurture, then manage. Remember, the chimp is 10 times stronger than the human, so trying to arm wrestle it is a bad idea for everyone involved. Nurture, then manage. Exercise your chimp by taking it to a safe compound, letting it out, letting it vent for 10 minutes or however long it takes in order for it to calm down. Do not comment while it's venting. 3. Then put your chimp in a box. 4. Distract your chimp when it's going haywire. If you're struggling waking up in the morning, count down from 5, and as soon as you finish, get up. Give your chimp a task to focus on. And remember the golden rule of the chimp. If you are experiencing a thought or an emotion you don't want to be experiencing, your chimp is hijacking you. The human has a fundamental drive towards self-fulfillment and purpose. It is the part of your brain which engages when you are engaging rational and logical thinking, grey thinking. The laws of society are what govern the human because it wants to flourish, and it is what manages the chimp after it has been nurtured. 3. The computer, the parietal lobe. It processes information 20 times faster than the human and 5 times faster than the chimp, and it is the storing house in your brain of all of your beliefs, values, perspectives and mindsets, otherwise known as autopilots, your positive beliefs, your gremlins, your easily reprogrammable negative beliefs and unrealistic expectations, and your goblins, your traumas and hardwired beliefs that are very difficult to change. These 3 things govern your mindsets based on how you see yourself, how you see the world, and how you view other people. Your stone of life, so your values, the truths of life, otherwise known as the realistic autopilots of the beliefs that you have of the world that govern your behaviour, and your force of life or your purpose. Remember the grandchild technique. Moving on to the 3 aspects that we covered at the end: communication. Speak through your human to facilitate better communication. Adjust your expectations of others so they're not unrealistic, and manage your prejudice. Also, one thing I forgot to mention: when someone else is having a go at you or is emotional, understand that their chimp is speaking and allow their chimp to exercise itself, and then revisit the conversation by speaking through your human after their chimp has calmed down. Success. The 4 aspects of success are commitment, ownership, accountability and goals. Understand, your human and chimp will want 2 different things. So, your chimp will want external validation, money and power. Your human will want self-fulfillment and purpose. And lastly, happiness. Happiness is comprised of confidence and security. To feel more confident, make sure you place your confidence in your efforts rather than your results. To avoid volatility and security. Your chimp has an innate need for security, so do the fear-setting exercise whenever you are worried about something. Stay disciplined, playful and dangerous. Adios muchachos y muchachas.